Hey there, we've all seen this play out a million times, right? A big problem blows up in the news, everyone agrees something has to be done, and a new policy is born, full of the very best intentions. But what happens next is, well, it's usually a mess. So in this explainer, we're going to pop the hood and look at the hidden architecture of how policy really works to understand why good intentions are almost never enough.
Okay, let's dive right in with something I think we've all felt at some point: the policy paradox. It's that nagging feeling that the solutions we design to fix things often end up making them even more complicated. And this gets us to the heart of the matter, the big, frustrating question. We see so much sincere concern, a genuine desire to help people, but the results are so often the complete opposite of what was promised. So, what gives? Why does this keep happening over and over again? It's a cycle that just seems to be on repeat. The public demands action. A law gets passed, and then what? The system gets messier, not cleaner. The problem doesn't go away, it just gets harder to deal with, and almost always a lot more expensive to manage. But what if this isn't just random bad luck? What if there's a predictable pattern here? A kind of ghost in the machine that's running the show no matter what the issue is? Well, there is. And to see it, let's just imagine a simple scenario. Say a city decides to ban cheap, sugary sodas to improve public health. Seems like a great intention, right? Well, let's break down the pattern that so often follows. And here it is, the blueprint. First, you get visibility. The issue of sugary drinks is suddenly everywhere. Then comes concern. It quickly turns into a moral issue. These drinks are bad, and good people should be against them. This moral certainty builds pressure for step 3, punishment. We have to do something, and that something is usually a ban. But here's the crucial part: adaptation. People don't just stop drinking sweet things. They adapt. They drive to the next town to buy soda, or they just switch to other sugary drinks that aren't on the ban list. And this leads to the final step: concentration. The cost doesn't just disappear. Now, local shops are losing business, and the health problem hasn't been solved. It's just shifted. The risk and the cost get concentrated somewhere else. So what's our typical reaction when we see this messy outcome? We double down. We assume the policy just wasn't tough enough, that the punishment needed to be even more severe. We tell ourselves, well, clearly we just haven't gone far enough yet. And in doing so, we feed that cycle all over again. You know, this reveals a really important shift in how we need to think about this. The problem isn't usually bad people or bad intentions. The problem is a bad system. And here's the absolute key takeaway. We launch policies based on our values, sincere concern, a clear sense of right and wrong. But the second that policy is out in the real world, it stops responding to our good intentions. It starts responding to incentives, to how real people adapt, and to all the hidden costs that nobody talked about in the beginning. This is one of the toughest but most important things to get our heads around. You don't need a single villain, not one person acting in bad faith, for a system to produce a terrible outcome. You can have everyone, from the public to the politicians, acting with a totally genuine desire to help and still end up making things so much worse. Now, to be clear, morality isn't the enemy here. It's actually essential. That feeling that something is unfair or unsafe is what gets the conversation started in the first place. The trouble starts when we ask morality to do a job it was never designed for, which is predicting complex real-world consequences. That moral certainty can actually blind us to what's really happening on the ground. So if that old way of thinking just keeps us stuck in this loop, how do we break out? Well, it all starts by changing the fundamental question we ask when we look at a problem. This is the shift we have to make. We've got to move on from just asking, is this behavior right or wrong? That's a moral judgment. Instead, we have to start asking a much more practical, evidence-based question. What actually happens when we try to stop it this specific way? See, this new question forces us to look beyond our intentions. It makes us ask, okay, who's going to change their behavior to get around this new rule? Who's really paying the price for this, financially or otherwise? Who is now in a more dangerous spot because of what we did? And which parts of our system, like hospitals or police, are going to be left quietly cleaning up the mess? Once we start asking these better questions, we can finally start talking about what better policy really looks like. And it's not about being soft or indifferent. It's about designing for the world as it actually is, not the world we wish it was. Better policy is often, well, it's slower. It's less emotionally satisfying. It means having really clear, measurable goals instead of just vague moral statements. It means resisting that urge for a quick, punitive reaction and instead paying super close attention to incentives. It prioritizes reducing actual, real-world harm over achieving some kind of moral purity. And most of all, it has the humility to constantly ask, and then what? What happens next? I want to leave you with this final, really powerful idea. The goal of a policy is not to magically erase human behaviors we don't like. That's a fantasy. It's not going to happen. The real choice we have is whether our attempts to manage that behavior make things more expensive and more harmful or less so. And when you start to see policy through that lens, the whole conversation changes. It stops being about winning an argument and starts being about designing a system that we can all actually live with. The real question is, are we willing to look?